In the Tunisian countryside, a German maintenance sergeant kneels beside an olive-drab motorcycle, his hands quivering as he removes the air cleaner cover. The Harley-Davidson WLA sits silently amidst a captured American motor pool, surrounded by dozens of identical machines. With 15 years of experience as a mechanic, he's worked on the finest German engineering, including BMWs that embodied the pinnacle of European motorcycle design. But the sight before him now elicits a realization that transcends mere mechanics, one rooted in the language of mathematics. This is no ordinary motorcycle, it's a message etched in steel and gasoline. And that message is clear: America. The motorcycle before him may appear rudimentary by German engineering standards, with its 45 cubic inch flathead engine and outdated Springer front suspension. The lack of rear suspension has earned these machines the hardtail moniker among American riders. The 3-speed handshift transmission is basic, almost utilitarian in its design. While this machine may prioritize mass production over refinement, its sturdy construction is evident in the quality of the welds. The sergeant's examination reveals a workhorse, not a precision instrument, but one that could prove formidable in the right hands. The expert examines the motorcycle, noting the meticulous craftsmanship evident in its construction. The paint is applied with a thick, even consistency, and the components fit together with a level of precision that suggests the use of quality tools and rigorous quality control measures. This machine was clearly assembled with speed, but without compromising the integrity of its manufacture. The inspector's gaze then falls upon the manufacturer's plate, revealing the serial number 42 WLA 43576. The 42 designation indicates that this model was produced in the year 1942, even though it may have been completed in 1943. The Americans had standardized their wartime production processes, streamlining their record-keeping and prioritizing output. The serial number 43576 that follows sends a chill down the inspector's spine, as it suggests that at least 43,576 of these motorcycles had been manufactured by the time this particular unit left the factory. 43,000 of a single model, a testament to the industrial might and efficiency of the American war effort. The Harley-Davidson WLA's journey commenced in 1940, over a year prior to Pearl Harbor's involvement in the war. Observing the European conflict, the United States Army formulated specifications for a military motorcycle. Approximately 16,500 units of the renowned BMW R75, Germany's premier military motorcycle, were produced between 1940 and 1945. However, this figure pales in comparison to the Americans' ability to manufacture this single model within just 18 months, without the constraints of steel rationing faced by their German counterparts. The Americans' industrial prowess allowed them to construct both motorcycles and tanks, a feat unmatched by the Germans' limited wartime production. The story of the Harley-Davidson WLA's development showcases the stark contrast between the two nations' wartime manufacturing capabilities. The U.S. military sought a straightforward, dependable, and mass-producible motorcycle during World War II. Harley-Davidson answered the call with the WLA, a military variant of their civilian WL model. The W denoted the 45 cubic inch flathead engine family, while the L signified high compression, though the Army version utilized medium compression for enhanced reliability. The A stood for Army. The design was intentionally conservative, with a 739cc engine delivering a modest 25 horsepower at 4,500 revolutions per minute. This output was not particularly impressive compared to contemporaries, as the BMW R71 produced 22 horsepower from a similar displacement, and the more advanced R75 generated 26 horsepower. The WLA's engine was renowned for its remarkable durability, rather than raw power. Its side valve design with a low 5:1 compression ratio allowed it to operate on low-octane 74 gasoline, which would have quickly destroyed the high-performance German engines. The air-cooled system eliminated the vulnerability of coolant-based designs, while the simple valve train minimized potential failure points. Survival was the key priority over performance enhancements. The transmission followed a similarly straightforward approach. A 3-speed manual gearbox was controlled by a lever on the left side of the fuel tank, with a foot-operated clutch. This configuration, while unfamiliar to German riders accustomed to BMW's foot shifters and hand clutches, proved to be a reliable and functional setup. The Springer front fork provided adequate suspension capabilities. The Harley-Davidson WLA was a remarkable feat of engineering, not for its design, but for the industrial system that brought it to life. Powered by a pair of parallel springs and a friction damper, the rigid rear frame relied on a sprung seat to absorb the impact of the road. While crude, this approach proved functional. In 1941, Harley-Davidson was primarily a civilian company, producing motorcycles for law enforcement and recreational use. However, by 1942, the company had undergone a dramatic transformation, becoming a war production facility operating around the clock. The Milwaukee factory floor became an assembly line where women, with no prior experience in mechanics, built these motorcycles with a level of precision that would have been unimaginable during peacetime. This remarkable feat of mass production was the true innovation behind the WLA, rather than its design. The figures spoke volumes. In 1940, Harley produced several hundred 639 WLAS models for evaluation. Production ramped up to thousands the following year. 646 after the Pearl Harbor attack in 1942, the assembly lines roared to life. 10,653 motorcycles, then 20,000, and finally 30,000. By the war's end, Harley-Davidson 7 O'Clock had manufactured over 90,000 WLA and WLC motorcycles. The WLC was a slightly 707 heavier variant built for the Canadian Army. But that wasn't the extent of their efforts. The company 713 also produced enough spare parts to construct an additional 30,000 motorcycles, 719 including complete inventories of engines, transmissions, frames, wheels, and every 725 component needed to keep these machines operational in combat for years. For this remarkable 732 achievement, the United States War Department commended Harley-Davidson. The Army-Navy E Award, a prestigious accolade for exceptional wartime manufacturing, was bestowed upon the organization twice, first in 1943, and again in 1945. The ceremony was a grand affair, with high-ranking military officials in attendance and aircraft soaring overhead in formation. As a symbol of their contribution, workers were presented with small pins to wear on their lapels, cementing their status as soldiers of the production line. This was no mere propaganda, but rather a recognition of an industrial triumph. The WLA's inherent simplicity enabled this remarkable surge in production. While each motorcycle required approximately 3,000 individual components, a fraction of the parts needed for a B-24 Liberator bomber, the design facilitated rapid training of new workers. Women who had previously worked as secretaries or shop clerks were able to transition seamlessly into this critical role just 6 months later. The ability to rapidly assemble and deploy the WLA motorcycle was a testament to its meticulously engineered design. Trainees could master engine installation and electrical wiring in a matter of weeks, as the components were manufactured with forgiving tolerances that accommodated minor variations. This emphasis on ease of assembly was a hallmark of the WLA's development. Quality control was also remarkably rigorous, with each unit undergoing thorough testing before acceptance by military inspectors. The Army's rejection of non-compliant machines ensured that standards were upheld even during the production surge, resulting in a low rejection rate that validated the WLA's simplified yet effective engineering approach. This streamlined design philosophy enabled the efficient distribution of over 30,000 WLA units to the Soviet Union under the Lend-Lease program. Countless American motorcycles were dispatched to Allied nations worldwide, from Britain and Canada to China and India. The iconic WLA model served in every theater of the war, enduring diverse environments from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforest. In a Tunisian motor pool, a German sergeant tallies the impressive stockpile 73 WLA units, a mere fraction of America's staggering manufacturing capacity. Contemplating this overwhelming industrial might, he ponders the implications for the ongoing conflict. The immense industrial infrastructure was essential to construct these vehicles and transport them across the vast Atlantic, navigating the perilous submarine-infested waters, before distributing them to frontline units. While the Americans suffered losses to U-boats, they swiftly replaced the sunken ships, outpacing Germany's capacity to sink them. These motorcycles traversed the ocean, packed and crated in cargo holds, arriving in North Africa to support operations far from their production facilities. The sergeant examines a maintenance log left behind during the American withdrawal, revealing that the WLA model in question had accumulated 3,200 miles on the odometer. The meticulous records document regular oil changes, one clutch adjustment, 2 sets of spark plugs, and a single carburetor service. The German military's fleet of BMW R-75 motorcycles were engineering marvels, capable of navigating treacherous terrain and outperforming their American counterparts in numerous ways. These 4-speed, shaft-driven machines with overhead valve engines and reverse gears were a testament to German ingenuity. However, their maintenance demands were significant, requiring skilled mechanics, specialized tools, and a steady supply of spare parts, resources that the Wehrmacht often lacked in the face of the war's relentless pace. While the R-75s could handle 3,200 meters of desert conditions and required little more than routine spark plug changes, their complexity made them a constant challenge for the German forces, who ultimately found themselves pressed for the time necessary to keep these engineering masterpieces in optimal condition. The war's onset found approximately 150 motorcycle manufacturers poised to supply machines, but the Shell program's rationalization whittled that down to just 30 before hostilities commenced. By 1940, heavy motorcycle production had consolidated within 2 dominant companies, BMW and Zundap. From 1940 to 1945, the BMW R-75 saw a total production run of roughly 16,500 units, while the Zundap potassium sulfide reached around 18,700 during the same period. Combined German heavy motorcycle output amounted to approximately 35,200 machines. In stark contrast, American production of the WLA model alone exceeded 90,000 units, with an additional 30,000 parts manufactured. The numerical disparity was staggering, as the Americans churned out 3 Harley-Davidsons for every German heavy motorcycle built. However, the imbalance extended far beyond mere figures. The German motorcycle industry relied on skilled workers, specialized tools, and materials that were becoming increasingly scarce as the war dragged on. Each BMW R-75 motorcycle consumed resources that could have been used to produce a weapons carrier, artillery prime mover, or light reconnaissance vehicle. The time and labor invested in motorcycle production meant fewer resources were available for building tanks, aircraft, or submarines. In contrast, the American motorcycle industry was a relatively minor component of their massive industrial mobilization. While Harley-Davidson produced 90,000 WLAS models, American factories churned out over 86,000 tanks, nearly 300,000 aircraft, 2 million army trucks, and almost 193,000 artillery pieces. The United States manufactured almost 2/3 of the world's military equipment during this period. The Allied forces demonstrated an exceptional capacity to simultaneously produce military equipment and maintain civilian production levels that would have been the envy of any European nation during peacetime. A German sergeant stumbles upon an ammunition box attached to one of the Harley-Davidson motorcycles, which contains a simple field maintenance toolkit. The toolkit includes essential tools such as wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, and spark plug sockets, all made of sturdy stamped steel. These 90,000 toolkits were distributed worldwide, enabling soldiers to perform basic repairs on their machines in the field without the need for depot-level maintenance. The sergeant contemplates the strain on German supply chains. The vast expanse of the Eastern Front posed immense logistical challenges for the German military. Spare parts for their BMW motorcycles, sourced from Munich, had to navigate a distribution network designed for a much smaller operational theater in Central Europe. Now, German forces were spread across Norway, Egypt, and the outskirts of Stalingrad, and the supply chain struggled to keep up. A broken-down BMW might sit idle for weeks, waiting for a replacement part from Germany, if it ever arrived. Concurrently, Allied bombing campaigns systematically eroded German industrial capacity, further diminishing production and accelerating the need for equipment replacement. In contrast, the WLA embodied a fundamentally different approach: simplicity in design and construction. The American forces faced a formidable challenge in the field, but they met it with an unwavering determination. They churned out motorcycles in such staggering numbers that the occasional breakdown posed little hindrance. Whenever a WLA model faltered, the troops simply abandoned it and requisitioned a replacement from the well-stocked motor pool. There was always an abundance of spare parts, ammunition, and other essential supplies to keep the war machine running. The sergeant stumbled upon a discarded technical manual for the WLA, printed in English with meticulously detailed diagrams. The level of documentation astounded him, as the manual provided exploded views showcasing every component and their precise assembly, along with specifications for tolerances, adjustments, and troubleshooting guides for common issues. It was clear that the Americans had industrialized not just the production, but also the maintenance of their military equipment. The American military engineered a comprehensive motorcycle maintenance framework that enabled even minimally skilled soldiers to undertake repairs, typically requiring specialized expertise on German vehicles. This systematic approach extended beyond the motorcycles themselves. The U.S. Army established dedicated supply chains to support their motorcycle fleet, categorizing, cataloging, and distributing spare parts through a depot system that ensured forward units received necessary components, if not always instantaneously. While not flawless, this logistical infrastructure operated on a scale the German military struggled to match. In contrast, German engineers had crafted impressive machines, such as the BMW R75 with its innovative three-wheel drive system capable of traversing. The pinnacle of pre-war German engineering prowess was embodied in the Harley and Zundap potassium sulfide motorcycles, both boasting impressive capabilities. However, the magnificence of these machines was constrained by the limited resources available to Germany. Undeterred, the Germans sought to compensate through ingenious measures. In August 1942, BMW and Zundap collaborated to standardize parts between their respective motorcycle models, aiming to create a hybrid design, the BW43, that would amalgamate the best attributes of both. This standardization program achieved a remarkable 70% parts commonality, simplifying the supply chain and enabling mechanics to salvage components from one model to repair the other. Yet, even this innovative approach could not entirely overcome the underlying resource challenges. The American industrial juggernaut left German analysts bewildered. Captured intelligence revealed the United States had doubled its manufacturing output between 1940 and 1944, outstripping the combined production of Britain, the Soviet Union, and all Axis powers. German propaganda dismissed these figures as inflated, but the facts spoke for themselves. A Harley-Davidson motorcycle, long dormant, roared to life with a distinctive rumble, its magneto-ignition system independent of the battery. This display of American industrial might defied German expectations. The engine's rumble echoes the familiar V-twin sound. With a quick twist of the throttle, the immediate response is palpable. The power surges seamlessly from low to high revs, without any hesitation. This is no sophisticated power plant, but rather a rugged tractor engine adapted for motorcycle use. Yet, it performs its task reliably, continuing to deliver its dependable service. As the engine idles, the rider contemplates the deeper significance of this machine. It represents not merely a mode of transportation, but a symptom of a larger issue that the tactical brilliance and advanced weaponry of the Wehrmacht could not overcome. The German military had been designed to wage swift, decisive campaigns, relying on the superiority of their training and equipment. Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, was their strategy, strike fast, achieve objectives before the enemy could mobilize, and secure victory. The Reich's industrial might had proven pivotal in previous campaigns. That same strategy had succeeded in Poland, France, and even the initial stages of the invasion of the Soviet Union. However, the war had now transformed into a prolonged battle of attrition, where industrial capacity would ultimately determine the outcome. In this type of conflict, the nation capable of mass-producing 90,000 motorcycles as a secondary priority, while simultaneously manufacturing hundreds of thousands of aircraft and tens of thousands of tanks, would inevitably emerge victorious. The WLA motorcycle may have been inferior to the BMW R75 in most performance metrics, but its sheer numerical advantage, supported by abundant supplies and comprehensive maintenance manuals, gave it a decisive edge. The R75 was produced in small numbers, hampered by supply chains that struggled to keep up with combat attrition, and maintained by mechanics who were themselves becoming increasingly scarce as casualties rose. Nearby, other German soldiers gathered around, observing their sergeant inspect the captured American motorcycles. One young private, fresh from training, inquired if they could utilize these seized vehicles. The sergeant affirmed they could, noting the WLA's simplicity allowed any rider familiar with motorcycles to adapt rapidly. Yet, using these machines also confronted the soldiers with the psychological reality that the Americans possessed such an abundance, that losing dozens, even hundreds, barely registered. They'll construct more. They'll transport more. They'll continue to provide more hardware than Germany can eliminate. A lieutenant arrives, examining the seized motor pool. He inquires about operability. The sergeant reports that most of the Harleys are functional, requiring only fuel and minor repairs. The lieutenant nods, making notes. These motorcycles will be deployed with German units, integrated into the Wehrmacht's order of battle because Germany requires every vehicle it can field. This was a common tactic. The Germans utilized captured equipment throughout the conflict. French motorcycles, Soviet motorcycles, American trucks, British weapons, anything that could be maintained and supplied was pressed into service because German production couldn't satisfy demand. However, the sergeant recognized the stark reality that the enemy's industrial might surpass Germany's frontline production. This sobering acknowledgement revealed that the Americans could abandon in a minor retreat from a single theater more motorcycles than some German units received as their original allocation. Such realizations permeated the Wehrmacht, slowly eroding the confidence that had propelled their forces in the early war years. The sergeant is aware that the R75 is technically superior and that the Zundup KS 750 is a more suitable military motorcycle. He also knows that German engineering embodies the pinnacle of traditional craftsmanship. Yet, he is cognizant that despite these advantages, the sheer scale of American industrial capacity has become an insurmountable obstacle. The unforgiving mathematical truth of the situation was that none of it truly mattered. 73 Harley-Davidson motorcycles sat idly in a captured depot in Tunisia, while 90,000 manufactured parts awaited assembly into 30,000 more. This was the face of defeat, cloaked in olive drab paint and equipped with Springer front forks. The Americans, however, understood something the Germans had missed: the motorcycle itself was almost irrelevant. What truly mattered was the system, the training, the supply chain, the maintenance, the replacement pipeline, and the industrial base that could lose equipment faster than the enemy could destroy it, yet still maintain numerical superiority. The WLA was not an engineering marvel, but rather a component in a military-industrial machine so vast that its full scope was difficult to comprehend. The Harley-Davidson factory in Milwaukee witnessed a remarkable transformation during the war years. Employees, many of whom were women with no prior manufacturing experience, worked tirelessly around the clock to assemble motorcycles at an unprecedented pace. Each worker specialized in a specific task, performing the same operations repeatedly with the efficiency born of practice. The assembly line moved with mechanical precision, with each station adding components until a complete motorcycle emerged, ready for military inspection. This was not the traditional craftsmanship, where a single worker or master mechanic would meticulously build an entire motorcycle. Instead, it was a highly organized, mass production system that enabled the factory to meet the demands of the wartime effort. The outcome of 26-14 was a manufacturing process that maintained operations across a vast military conflict. When a WLA Model 26-21 broke down in Burma, replacement components dispatched from Milwaukee reached India. Then were 26-26 funneled through the military logistics network to frontline units. Likewise, when a batch of 26-32 motorcycles was destroyed in an air raid in Italy, substitute vehicles arrived within weeks. This system 26-39 succeeded because it was engineered to function at an industrial scale. German manufacturing never attained 26-45 this level of systematization. BMW and Zundap persisted as relatively 26-50 conventional producers even amidst the war, relying on skilled personnel 26-56 executing intricate procedures. Quality stayed high, but production volume stayed 27-02 constrained. The Germans attempted to boost output through forced labor and concentration camp workers. The reliance on untrained conscripted labor proved problematic, as these workers lacked the specialized skills necessary to properly maintain the intricate machinery. Concerns over sabotage became a constant worry, and product quality declined even as demand escalated. By 1944, the situation had reached a critical juncture. Allied bombing campaigns systematically targeted German industrial centers, destroying factories, disrupting transportation networks, and killing workers. Raw material scarcity intensified as imports ceased and mining operations suffered damage. The synthetic fuel program that powered the Wehrmacht's mobile forces consumed resources that could have been directed towards other war production. Germany found itself simultaneously engaged in combat, managing occupied territories, developing advanced weapons like jet fighters and V-2 rockets, and struggling to sustain basic industrial output, all while operating with an economy smaller than that of its adversaries. The United States had already been manufacturing the 28-10 model before the war commenced. Meanwhile, the WLA continued rolling 28-16 off American production lines, with output actually increasing in 1944. 28-22. Despite the Allies' wartime success, these motorcycles were not of critical importance. American forces 28-29 primarily utilized jeeps, relegating the WLA to military police, 28-35 courier and escort duties. Yet the Americans persisted in building them, 28-41 leveraging their industrial capacity, trained workforce, and functional supply chains 28-46 to produce motorcycles concurrently with the war's other demands. In Tunisia, a German 28-53 Sergeant silences a captured Harley, the engine sputtering to a final 28-58 halt. Stillness pervaded the motor pool. He observed his comrades, detecting the same comprehension mirrored in their gazes. They had all performed the calculations. They all grasped the significance of these motorcycles. Some conflicts are won through bravery, others through tactical genius, and some through superior armaments or more effective training. This war, however, would be decided by industrial capacity, the side that could manufacture, transport, replace, and sustain more. And standing amidst the 73 mass-produced American motorcycles in this motor pool, every German soldier present understood which side held that advantage. The narrative did not conclude in Tunisia. WLA motorcycles served across every theater of war, liberating towns throughout France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. The Liberator, as they were affectionately dubbed by thankful civilians, were ubiquitous alongside Allied troops. Traversing Pacific islands, scaling Italian peaks, escorting convoys in India, and patrolling Chinese streets, wherever American forces operated, the WLA followed. Not because it was the pinnacle of motorcycle engineering, but due to its sheer availability, capable of equipping an entire global military. When the war concluded in 1945, the remaining production orders were swiftly cancelled. Surplus WLA models flooded the civilian market, selling at a fraction of their original cost. Returning American soldiers eagerly snatched them up, stripping off military components and customizing them for civilian life. These modified machines, the iconic WLA model, emerged as the cornerstone of the post-war motorcycle scene, paving the way for the chopper revolution and the proliferation of motorcycle clubs. The sheer abundance of these surplus machines made motorcycling accessible to an entire generation. Many of these WLA motorcycles found their way to the Soviet Union, which had received over 30,000 units through the Lend-Lease program. Remarkably, these machines endured the Cold War era in near original condition, as the limited access to Western parts and the absence of a customization culture in the Soviet bloc preserved them. Today, former Soviet nations have become major hubs for sourcing WLA parts and undertaking restoration projects, with these motorcycles surviving due to the very circumstances that once made them seem expendable during the war. The production accomplishment embodied by the WLA extended far beyond the realm of motorcycles. The American industrial machine showcased its remarkable capabilities when fully engaged. The principles that empowered Harley-Davidson to manufacture 90,000 motorcycles also enabled Ford to churn out a B-24 Liberator bomber every 63 minutes at Willow Run. Similarly, Kaiser shipyards launched Liberty ships faster than Germany could sink them. In 1944 alone, American factories produced more aircraft than Japan did throughout the entire conflict. This was the arsenal of democracy in action, not merely a slogan, but a tangible reality built on assembly lines operating around the clock, powered by workers who may have been teachers, shopkeepers, or homemakers before the war. They acquired new skills, adapted to industrial labor, and maintained this prodigious output. The Axis powers were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of American-made equipment. While the Germans and Japanese engineered impressive individual weapons and vehicles, they could not match the United States' industrial capacity. The BMW R75 motorcycle and Zundap potassium sulfide represented the pinnacles of their respective nations' engineering prowess. Yet, by 1945, BMW had produced fewer than 17,000 R75s, and Zundap had built less than 19,000 kilo Siemens 750s. In contrast, Harley-Davidson manufactured over 90,000 WLAS motorcycles, plus parts for 30,000 more, all while simultaneously producing aircraft engines, components, and other military equipment. This vast disparity in production volumes ultimately determined the outcome of the war. The Axis powers fought valiantly, securing tactical triumphs against numerically dominant foes. Yet, their brilliance had its limits, as the sheer industrial might of America eventually overwhelmed their resistance. In 1944, with factories operating at twice their pre-war capacity and supply ships crossing the oceans in convoys stretching to the horizon, the German sergeant in Tunisia was struck by the sight of 73 captured Harley-Davidson motorcycles, a stark realization of the scale of American production capabilities. The German commanders experienced a profound sense of resignation, recognizing the mathematical inevitability of their defeat in the face of America's unparalleled industrial capacity. Veteran soldiers recounted moments of stark realization, observing the vast American supply depots, the endless streams of aircraft, and the unending convoys of trucks and tanks. The WLA, while neither a revolutionary nor particularly impressive weapon, was present in overwhelming numbers, supporting American forces wherever they operated, with supplies that never dwindled and systems that remained functional. This overwhelming industrial power, more significant than the WLA's crude engineering, ultimately buried the enemy. Die amerikanische Industriemobilisierung war ein beeindruckendes Schauspiel, wenn man sie aus der Empfängerposition betrachtet. Es war die Waffe, die den Krieg gewann, nicht ein einzelner Panzer, Flugzeug oder Schiff, sondern das System, das sie schneller produzieren konnte, als der Feind sie zerstören konnte. Die deutschen Mechaniker, die dies erbeuteten Harley-Davidsons untersuchten, verstanden das sofort. Sie rechneten nach und erkannten, dass Deutschland niemals gewinnen konnte, nicht gegen einen Gegner, der 90.000 Motorräder als Nebenprojekt baute, waren der MIT der Hauptsache die Hälfte der Welt eroberte. The flathead engine lacked complexity, while the Springer front suspension was antiquated. The 3-speed 36-32 transmission remained basic. Yet, these limitations proved inconsequential. What truly mattered was that American workers, many new to industrial manufacturing, could construct these vehicles by the tens of thousands. They could then ship them across oceans, supported by supply chains that never faltered, and replace them faster than combat could destroy them. This was the real weapon, the asset Germany could not replicate. As the Wehrmacht mechanics stood in that captured motor pool in Tunisia in February 1943, they recognized the power of American industrial might. The thunderous roar of this production had delivered a clear message: you cannot outproduce us. The Harley-Davidson WLA, a rugged and straightforward machine, conveyed a powerful message to every German soldier who encountered it. Though the war would rage on for 2 more years, the writing was on the wall, etched in the relentless arithmetic of industrial warfare. Germany's struggle was against the sheer scale of American manufacturing might, an adversary as unyielding as the steel and gasoline that fueled the WLA's unstoppable advance. In the end, the WLA's true legacy transcended its battlefield exploits, standing as a testament to the industrial prowess of the nation that forged it. A country capable of such prodigious output was destined to bury its foes under an avalanche of mechanized might, no matter how long the conflict endured. The United States possessed an unparalleled industrial prowess, outstripping Germany's capabilities. While simultaneously manufacturing 90,000 motorcycles, they also built hundreds of thousands of aircraft and tens of thousands of tanks. The captured Harley-Davidson motorcycles in that motor pool were more than just vehicles. They represented the tangible evidence, the irrefutable proof, and the mathematical inevitability of America's industrial dominance leading to Germany's defeat. The German mechanics who inspected these mass-produced American steel machines understood with chilling clarity the implications of this overwhelming industrial capacity.